Everything's ready. I gotta get my script ready. I can't. Okay. So the speed is so slow. Okay, take two. Let's do this. Okay. How do people usually start their YouTube videos? This is legit in the script. Okay, so I love how African parents start wondering why they don't have a relationship with their African children, but it's like,
that ain't my fault. I mean, you beat the shit out of me.
Okay, so I've been mostly no contact with my narcissistic African parent for 5 years. Firm, no regrets, no regrets. In all seriousness, as I am right now, I've maintained little to no contact with this parent for 5 years. To be honest, I wanted to tell this story because it's been on my mind for a long time. I've had my narrative stolen from me, my voice, my body autonomy taken from me, and I thought that maybe talking about these things will help someone. The last thing I want is to add more trauma to the dumpster fire that we call the internet, but it's complicated. I don't want to be afraid to share my story and my experiences. I want to be honest about who I am and where I come from. And when I see other people sharing these stories on TikTok and everything else, it makes me realize that the more we share, the more this won't be normalized anymore. That if our generation chooses to have children, the things we talk about, the things we share will be better parents. So the more we talk about our trauma, our real life experiences, the closer we get to generational healing and to generationally changing the world. No. The more we talk about what we've been through, the more we'll pass on generational healing, the more things will get better, and therefore we will change the world. However, let me be careful. I have to save a few memories for the memoirs because once I'm rich and famous, once I'm an actor, I'll need stories I'm gonna have to tell. So I'm not gonna get into too much details, but I'll still share a little bit here and there. Okay. On this YouTube channel, I will be sharing many stories that will paint a picture of what I endured when I was growing up. I won't start at the very beginning. I'm going to start right in the middle in Medias Res. Hold on, wait. Okay, I looked it up. It's actually pronounced in medias res, which just means in the middle. You know, it's a literary term. It like starting your story in the middle. I'm such a dork. So the journey begins back in 2018, 2019. This is around the time where I began to journal. So this was essentially the start of my healing period. I was in college, very depressed, and had no outlet. So one night, I literally remember I'm tossing and turning, I cannot sleep. Even the white noise machine of YouTube is not working for me. So I grab a notebook and I began to just write out some things that I'm feeling, just expressing some thoughts, some opinions, a lot of things that I'd been carrying for a long time. And gradually I was able to work into the childhood trauma. I began journaling, healing, reflecting, doing the shadow work, summoning the devil, all that deep shit. What? But yeah, when I started to heal, it felt like I finally began to treat a really painful burn by, instead of just ignoring it, finally putting ointment on it. Finally okay, let's actually heal it. So here's the thing though, I experienced something very interesting. So I was so positive when I started to begin to heal. I started to see the light again, that I did one thing that a TikToker I remember I had seen had told people not to do when they began to heal. I wish I could find a specific video, but essentially what she had said was, when you start to heal, you cannot try not to, the natural gut instinct would be to go back and try to help mom and dad see it, help your grandmother see it, all this stuff. You need to fight that urge because if they can't see it, they're not gonna. And I remember hearing this and I was like, what? No, why would I not want to have other people in my life heal if I am now beginning to heal? Why wouldn't I want that to change? But essentially what she had said was, you cannot help people who do not see what you see. So like at the time, I really didn't understand it because I wanted my entire family to heal. Why wouldn't I want my entire family to heal? But then the summer of 2020 came along. Yes, that summer, the one very distinct, especially in Minnesota. And it was traumatic for me in more ways than one. I'm not gonna go into too much details, but that was the inciting incident for the reason why I would eventually go no contact with my narcissistic African parent. It was the breaking point, the final straw, the straw that broke the camel's back. Enough was enough. I realized something about my family, and there would be a friend who would phrase it perfectly, but my friend would say that, my friend would say this about their own parents. They'd be like, if they could, they would end my life if they could get away with it. And I remember thinking, damn, that is exactly how I put this. I had this painful realization that my parent did not wish well for me in any way, shape, or form. Like, it was just, like, I remember there was a moment in the middle of the argument where I'm hearing yelling, I'm hearing screaming, and like, all of a sudden my body sort of just stops. I don't shut down, but I just stop. And my body takes me back to my room. I shut the door and I just sit down and I'm just like, okay. I was numb. I had stopped fighting. I just remember I just stopped wanting to fight so hard to be understood. So yeah, like, strange thing, my body literally just like walks me over and puts me down, and I'm just like, okay. And instinctively in that moment, I'm just like, yeah, if I can help it, I am never returning back to this specific household. So the summer would end, and I went back to school for my final year of college. So before that point, like, the narcissistic parent was playing nice, you know, giving me the non-existent apology, talking about some, oh, in our culture, parents don't apologize to their children. They don't? That is so funny to me. Of course not. Why would they? How convenient. Like, there's no accountability taken. And guess what? It's literally written in the culture. So there's nothing you can do about it. That is what respect is, because it's in the culture. But yeah, like, giving me the non-existent apology, talking like buying me things as a form of an apology. And like, side note, I need to probably reflect on this, because I have a tendency to like love to give gifts, but I don't know if it's because that's one of the forms of like one of the love languages I like to show to other people, or if that's literally what I learned from the parent and I need to unlearn it. Questions I'll have to ask for literally the rest of my life. I love it. But that's just more that I need to process. Moving on. So anyway, I was starting to feel calm. I was back in school. I was putting my dorm room together. I was a weird, like, I never really decorated, which was weird. Like, I was just never really a decorative person. But growing up, I never really was allowed to do it. But anyway, putting my apartment back together, get my schedule, my books. Like, I had a apartment style dorm. So like, I was just putting my things back together. And like, for the first time in a long time, I'm starting to feel a lot of peace. Like, I'm feeling calm. But then one day, my phone rings and I see that it's my African parent. And I pick up. Before I can say anything, the phone starts to scream at me. Immediately, like, my body is in fight or flight mode. My heart is racing. The survival instincts are starting to kick in. And I'm trying to even come to terms with what is going on, and the yelling is continuing. So at a certain point, I remember I look at the phone, I put it on speaker, I put the phone down, and I'm looking at it as it's screaming at me. And I'm just kind of like, Okay. So eventually, the one-sided conversation ends, and at that moment, my body reacts. Again, just like in the moment during that argument, my body reacts before I really have time to think about it. Instinctively, I pick up the phone, block the contact, and delete the number, and I put my phone to the side. And I remember after doing that, I was just like, no, I'm done. I'm done. It's over. I'm done. Enough is enough. So weeks later, maybe 6 or so, a while passes. A family member would call me and say that my parent would be waiting for me outside the building. I sigh and I acknowledge it and I go to open the door. So at this point in time, I had begun journaling, reflecting, reading about toxic family dynamics, healthy communication, gray rocking, all the tools I would need. I knew what to do. When they showed up, I answered the door and I said very little. They asked me why I wasn't answering their phone calls. I gave no emotional response. I was a rock, a great rock. Johnson. No, I'm actually a dork. I gave no emotional response. I was a rock, a great rock. They tried the intimidation. They stood really close to my face, damn near like this, but I gave no response. I was looking at the ground. I was 100%. I was done. I asked them if they needed to use the bathroom. They used the bathroom and then they left. The manipulation almost worked because afterwards I would unblock their number. They would call me and they'd be like, oh, I hope you will pick up my phone when I call you now. And I'd say, sure. But then the conversation would end. And I immediately hung up. I immediately deleted the number. A while later, I would get a voicemail from this African parent who said in the voicemail, and I remember this, if you harbor anger or hatred in your heart, your prayers won't be answered. Delete! No, because that's so Christian. Is that part of the culture too? I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to deal with it. I was just like, no, we're done. At a certain point, the African parent realized that I was not playing around no more. And anyone in my life who knows me knows I am a giant pushover. I'm always so quick to... Back then, I was quick to just roll over, to just be like, everything is fine. I'll just literally let the poison kill me on the inside rather than do anything. Giant pushover. But for me to hold a boundary like this, it was starting to really just impact certain dynamics. So since the intimidation wasn't working and the manipulation wasn't working, the African parent now sent the flying monkeys. So I'd originally hear this term from Dr. Dervasala. I would see her videos a lot on TikTok. I just want to make sure I'm saying her name right. 1 second. So, okay, yes, I think I said her name right. It's Ramani, Dr. Ramani. So, flying monkeys are people who act on behalf of a narcissistic person without knowing. So all sorts of people would begin to call me. They'd be like pastor, family friends, all of them asking me, oh, your parent told me that you weren't talking to them anymore. Why aren't you talking to them? And don't you understand? Your parent loves you, all this bullshit. And I would get so unbelievably angry at these people because they had no idea what I was dealing with. They only ever heard one side of the story. And it wasn't at that point in time I was ready to talk about the trauma. There would only be one person who I would talk to, tell them what would happen. But that was because they had a hand in raising me. So I was honest with them because I was like, this is what happened. And they were like, oh, they didn't even tell me that. And I was like, of course they didn't, because why would they tell you that? So when all these people would call and only tell me what I should do and not even call to be like, what happened? Why are you not talking to me? They would just be like, oh, don't you, your parent told me you're not talking to them. You have to talk to them, talk to them. And it's awesome. I would get so frustrated when I would journal. I'd literally scratching the words into my journal, talking about they don't know what happened. So I would reflect. So I would reflect and think and like just be like, they don't know what happened. They don't know what happened. Why are they telling me? So, little insight. In my journaling and my reflecting, I would also have like conversations with the higher version of myself, if that makes sense. The person that I imagine myself to be, the queen I imagine myself to be. And I would talk, like, I'd be like, they don't know what happened to my higher form, I guess. And my higher form would be like, yeah, they don't know what happened. They don't know what you went through. They only ever knew what was told to them. And I'd be like, why is it that they don't care to know? My higher form would tell me, do you want them to know? They'd be like, no, why would I want to share what happened to me? But it's just, so I would speak to the higher form of myself, and they'd be like, they don't know what happened. I'd be like, that's true. They don't know what happened. Are you willing to share? No, I'm not willing to share. Why would I share what happened to me? But you have to understand it from their perspective. They are not they don't know that they're being used to literally manipulate you, to intimidate you. They don't know that. I guess not. I guess not. But still, like, why? I know. Understanding sucks. But eventually I learned that I couldn't be angry with them because I realized that they didn't know that they were being used. They were being manipulated. And of course, this is a system that is 9 times out of 10 a lot of other African parents use with their own children. So, like, this is normal for them. Eventually time would pass, and like both of my parents would come to visit me at school. Now at this point in time, like, it was towards the end of the school year, so it was like, oh, you're graduating, what is the next plan in your life? And I'm gonna let y'all know right now, I had no plans. I was ready to be homeless. Because I was just like, I'm not returning to that house. I'm sorry. I had no, and I had nothing going for me. I had no job lined up. I had no place I was gonna live. I had nothing. The only plan I had was a backup plan that I was gonna be staying with my friend while I was in college. But of course I didn't tell any of them this. I was just like, I got a job and I'm gonna be staying here. So I remember when they came, when my parents came, the parent that, the narcissistic African parent would then kneel down in front of me while we were sitting in a common area. They would kneel down in front of me and begin to beg me, saying that, oh, I never meant to hurt you. I'm so sorry. And of course, I understand this to be yet another manipulation tactic. Because it's the whole, oh, this is your parent. Why would you allow them to kneel before you and beg you? But like, the thing is, growing up, I literally saw this used and utilized many, many different times against other family members. And I remember I would look and I'd be like, it feels funny when it is happening to you, because you instinctively you want to. But the part of my brain that finally started to heal was like, let's hold off, because we've seen this before and the person never changed and they never did anything different. Don't be so quick to be so, when we know we've seen this before. We've seen it before. I understood what it means culturally, but when you know the tactics that are keep being utilized against you, you have a tendency to not fall for it anymore. But I understood what was happening, and I was a gray rock. I was Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Like, I was just a rock. No eye contact, no response, no emotion. I was done. I'm done. I would explain my plans for the future, the non-existent plans, and the one-sided conversation would be over. Time eventually passed, and my young adult life would take me for a wild ride, but I held my boundaries firm. Until, however, I would need to make contact. By this point, I was living with my younger sibling, and we needed help. I was strongly against. I was ready to thug it out. I really was. I was like, I don't really want to do this, but we had literally no other option at this point in time. I remember we would end up staying in our parents' house that night, but I did not sleep a wink in that household. My body was on high alert. Again, the thought came back to me. If they could end my life and get away with it, they would. So no, that night, I remember I decided I would never be dependent on my African parents. If I would have to be near death before I would even reach out to them. Like if I'm making plans for my life, like plan Z would be finally to talk to my African parents, like to ask them for help. It would be literally the last of the last resorts. The last. No, but I'm dead ass. But yes, after this incident, I would eventually realize how far I've came with my African parents, because there would be a time where they would call my sibling and they would bring me the phone and be like, oh, I'm looking for my thing. Have you seen it? And I'd be like, I have no idea where your thing is. So you have to understand, when I was in my parents' house, I was this specific parent's like literal personal assistant. Everything they knew they needed, I knew where it was. So when I lived in this house, the narcissistic parent would I had to keep a mental inventory of all their items. Otherwise, I'd be known as a useless child who, if I didn't know where a random ass piece jewelry was. Now, here's the thing. When I was growing up in that household, I was the personal assistant to this African parent. Like anything they needed at a moment's notice, I needed to know where it was. Otherwise, I'd be a useless child. No, it would be Sunday morning. We'd be getting ready for church, everything. Oh, I want to wear this specific, distinct shoe I haven't seen in 3 years. Come and help me find it. I can't find it. I don't know where it is. You're so useless. Okay. I'm smiling, but it hurts. I wash, rinse, repeat every single Sunday. I would be Eventually, my family began to feel uncomfortable with my no contact decision. My older sibling would tell me, oh, they want a relationship they want things to change. They don't want things to be like this. They feel bad about what happened. They want to help heal the family. And I'd be like, that's great. Did they say they were going to go to therapy and all that stuff? Did they say they were going to go to therapy? My younger sibling would constantly ask me, oh, do you maybe want to just talk to them, have a conversation with them? And I would be like, I have begged and pleaded for a long time. I've had several conversations oh, but this is why you were doing this to us. And then the next day they'd be doing the same thing to hurt us. And I'd be like, no, guys, I'm done. My enabling African parent would be like, I don't want all this stuff to be on my head, And I'd be like, I'm sorry, I really am, but no, I'm not doing this anymore. I can't be in the same room with them. Our family won't heal until we finally start to look at things, and nobody wants to take an honest look about things. And I ain't trying to be nice, so no. Here we are. After life struggles, I decided that this year, 2025, would be the year that things were different. I wanted to establish myself. I want to be seen for who I am. So there's this amazing YouTuber, Susie, one of my favorite YouTuber animators, storytime YouTuber animator. And he says that when he started his channel, he wanted to show how good he was at storytelling. And I thought, that's perfect. How else are people gonna know an amazing storyteller / actress? What did I want to portray when I started my own channel? Well, for me, I still want to portray that I'm a good actor. I'm gonna probably do skits and stuff, but I also wanted to share my own personal stories the same way that I see all these YouTuber animators or like YouTubers share their own stories. And I wanted to be upfront with my journey and really just like have like a cemented, like, this is how far I've come, this is where I am. And I want to continue to grow. I want to showcase who I am because I've come a long way. The fact that I'm still even able to smile and just still be joyous. I mean, I still cry into my pillow at night sometimes. I don't want to be suppressed any longer. I don't want to feel like I am holding silence for the sake of others. I want to be myself. I want to break free. So, at the end of every personal story that I sort of kind of tell, I wanted to leave people with a message or a positive lesson or something, because we can't just be telling stories out here and then we don't have like a lesson that we learn from it all. With my specific lesson of going no contact with an African parent, I wanted to leave you all with this, whoever decides to watch this video. You will know when enough is enough. And I was able to figure it out for myself. In order for us to pass on generational healing, we need to acknowledge the generational trauma that we have endured. What is the final lesson? No one should have to endure abuse. Not from a friend, not from a relative, not from a family, not even from the people who gave birth to you. You deserve better. You deserve better. You deserve to be with people who love you for who you are. You deserve to be loved for the person you are. So if anyone resonates with anything I've shared, not really with all the details, I hope this helps you feel less alone on your healing journey. So, in order for things to change, like, we need to stop upholding these toxic family systems that we call culture sometimes. Like, there is the actual culture and there's the abuse that is found in the culture, and that's what needs to stop. There's nothing saying that respect isn't deserved for the parents and for the kids as well. Respect is very important in the African, like African cultures. What is not to be tolerated is the abuse. So, just all that's to say is you are allowed to choose peace. You're allowed to choose healing. You're allowed to come into your own and understand who you are, because trust me, there are better days ahead. But yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you'll come back for more. Stay tuned. Such a dork. Okay, cut the camera. What the